We're all set. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Aurora First Christian Church. As you can see, I'm still here in my living room. And, we will get through this one way or the other. We will all get through this corona virus thing. Well, here's wishing that all of you out there are happy and healthy. If you have anybody that wishes to be on the prayer list, for goodness sake, give me a call. Send us a note. Send us something so that we can know. Our prayer list today has grown a little bit. But anyway, Karma and her family, the Smith family, the Finley's family, Hayden, Brandon and Will, Charlotte and Larry Smith and their daughters and granddaughter, Scott Forrester, Donald Newberry, Linda and Craig Manette and their children, Cassidy, Lorelei and Addie, Bethany and her father, Ebony Martinez and her family, Eddie Hinchy and his two granddaughters, Nikki Perkins, Nikki Wilmore and her sons, Keith Donaldson and family, Shauna and Chad Clifton, Kambar Rustamoff, hi Kambar, Joseph Rice, Mark Pettit, Richard Brown, Reggie and Michael Ackelmeyer, Donnie So, Deanna Serong, Kathy Johnson, Brenda Thiel, Mason Parmenter, Daniel, Yvette and her daughter Brianna, Beatrice Nianti, Bratch family, Mr. Kim, Chris Burek, Carmen Miranda, Paul Stacy, Joey Tesmer, and his brother Keith Tesmer, Keaton Tesmer, Kyung Jo Kim, and anybody who is under financial duress or any kind of stress whatsoever, including homelessness. If you're ill or have lost a loved one due to illness, if you have feelings of hopelessness, depression, or loneliness, our prayers are all going out to you. Those struggling against themselves, too, suffering under the events of the current times, and those living in fear, those experiencing new challenges and joys. And here's hoping that there are some joys out there and for you. Something to put a smile on your face and make you happy. We are in some times when we're having some problems. And it doesn't seem as though it's just a few people that are having problems. It seems as though there's a lot of people that are having problems. Now then, we may not be able to take these hands of ours and go out and deliberately help all of these people, even though we would love to. We can't lift everybody up, but we can put them into our prayers and pray for them. Prayer is an incredibly powerful healing tool. It is probably the most powerful thing in the world. And God listens to your prayers. He listens to all of us. Jesus taught us that whenever two or more of you are gathered in my name, I will be there with you, and wherever I am, my Father will be there too. Jesus is with us today. Jesus is with us every day. And God is with us every day. All we have to do is just simply talk to him. And you don't have to just simply say, all hail, and get down on your knees and do everything to talk to him. The same as I am talking from me to you right now. That's all you have to do. God and I talk together all the time. And listen, he talks back to me too. Because all you have to do is listen. God has a booming voice. He is also incredibly sweet and soft and tender. His voice can be heard in the joy of a child's first prayer. Can be heard in the sound of a simple little cricket chirping outside your bedroom window, or a bird singing in a tree. These are all the vocal cords of God. And he can talk to us directly too. He can come to you in a dream. All we have to do is just be patient and open our hearts to him and say, yes, Lord, you are in my life. My life is yours. And please, God, listen to me. He listens to us. He listens to us every time we talk to him. And you figure there are, how many billions of people on this planet? And you know something? If they were all to pray at one time, he hears each and every single one of those. And one of the things that is beautiful about him is that he is omnipotent. He can hear each and every one of those prayers individually at the same time. It's kind of like a mother listening to her children as they are playing in the living room. And the little brother and the little sister are squabbling, and she can hear them, and she can hear the big brother and the teenage sister squabbling too. And she can sort everything out. God is like that. And now we are lucky as Christians because God taught us through his Son how to pray. And now may we pray that prayer that his Son taught us, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. The lesson today is about kitties. I didn't have anybody ask me any questions or ask to search up anything this past 2 weeks. But I thought, hey, what can I find in the Bible regarding children? How many stories are there about children? There's quite a bit of stuff in there on how we, as children of God, can raise our children and what we are supposed to do with them. Many of the teachings of children and what we should do for them are in the book of Proverbs, and just read it. Read the book of Proverbs in the Old Testament. And we, as children of our parents, there are lessons in there too for us to follow, to listen to our parents. Listen to Father and listen to Mother. Dana and Lily, I know you're out there watching Grandpa today. Listen to Mommy, what Mommy has to tell you. Listen to what Daddy has to tell you. Listen to what your teachers have to tell you. There are 33 verses in there on how to raise children. Actual stories of children in the Bible, participating in the Bible. There's really not an awful lot in there. When I first started and I started looking through my Bibles, the first mention of children is when we meet Cain and Abel, the two sons of Adam and Eve. But when they separated, they weren't children, they were adults. The next story we hear about of a child, we hear about Moses, how he was a baby. And because the Pharaoh at that time was putting to death the firstborn children of baby boys of the Jews that were in Egypt, Moses' mommy took him and put him in a basket and put him in the river in some rushes where the young princess of the Pharaoh was bathing. And she was bathing with all of her staff and her helpers. And she found Moses. Now Moses was raised in the family of the Pharaoh. She had adopted him. So he was now Pharaoh's grandson. Moses went on then to lead the children out of Egypt. And we know about him talking to God the first time by seeing a fiery bush that was engulfed all in flames, but it wasn't being burned up. And Moses heard, Moses. God called his name to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt. The next time we hear of a child, we hear about the child Joseph. He was not the youngest brother of his daddy Jacob, but, well, Jacob had a brother. His name was Esau. And they were twins. But there weren't any stories about them. When Joseph was a young boy, his father sent him out to find his other brothers because he wanted to talk to them. Joseph's mother had made him a beautiful, beautiful coat. One that was made with many different colors in it. And we hear about the story of Joseph and his beautiful coat. His brothers take him and they're jealous of him. So they throw him down a dry well. And he can't get out of that well. But what did they end up doing then? They sold him into slavery. They sold him to some merchants going to Egypt. And one of the merchants was a very wealthy, prominent advisor to the Pharaoh of Egypt. And Joseph, through that advisor, became almost number 2 man in all of Egypt. And the story tells us how he became very, very important and very influential. We don't hear about any more children in the Bible until we get to a young boy who is a shepherd. He's a shepherd and he likes to play on, some people call it a lute, other people call it a zither. But at any rate, he would play it to watch over the sheep, and it would calm the sheep. This young shepherd loved God very, very much. And God loved him too. And God had great plans for this young shepherd. His name was David. David, at the age of 12, that's not being very big or very grown up, but at the age of 12, had started to work for the king of Israel, the very first king. And his name was Saul. And we know that David would soothe Saul by playing on his instrument and by singing to Saul. And one time, the Philistines, a bunch of people that were very, very aggressive, attacked Israel. And they sent their challenger out to meet all of the Israelites. Their challenger was a great big giant of a man, and his name was Goliath. David, a young shepherd boy, well trained in keeping off wolves, jackals, lions, bears, other animals, with a simple piece of string with a little tiny pocket on it called a sling. He used that sling against this great big giant after Saul had tried to dress him up in his own personal armor, which was made out of bronze and gold. But it was way too heavy, and for a 12-year-old boy, he couldn't move in it. But using a sling and picking up a few flat pebbles, he went to slew Goliath. Now then, Saul had offered rewards to any person who would champion Israel. But all of the people, all of his soldiers, were terrified of Goliath. Here was a man that was twice their height, twice as strong, and twice as mean. But David, with his sling and one smooth stone, threw it and hit Goliath right between the eyes, and then cut off his head after he had passed out. And so they say he saved Israel of the Philistines. Saul became jealous of David, and David went into hiding for a while. David became friends with Saul's son, and they became very, very close sons. The sons of the king, as they were called. But Saul had problems, and God took care of him. He was ultimately defeated in battle, and then David was crowned king of Israel. Now David, his daddy's name was Jesse, and he was a good man. God's son, Jesus, came from the lineage of David, because his earthly father, by the name of Joseph, was of the house of David. We learned that and we know that. Now then, after David, we don't hear any more stories about children until we hear about one of David's son's grandson. David's son Solomon would finish the work that King David had started on building the temple in Israel, in Jerusalem. This was the first permanent stone house to God since the Israelites fled Egypt. Solomon became one of the greatest rulers of all of Israel. And he reigned for many, many years. But upon his death, there was a great turmoil. And his children fought amongst themselves to see who was going to rule Israel. They fought amongst themselves so badly that they were killing each other. Finally, there was a 7-year-old boy that God called upon. He was the grandson of Solomon, and his name was Joash. Joash was only 7 years old when God first visited him and his mother and told them to go into hiding. They lived in Jerusalem. They went to the temple and hid in a room that was behind the Holy of Holies in the temple of the one that his grandpa Solomon had built. They hid there away from everybody. Now, the one that he had to fear was his grandma. His grandma wanted to be ruler of all of Israel. And so she had all of her own children assassinated and her grandchildren assassinated. But then God took care of her, and that her children turned right around and assassinated her. Joash lived for 40 years as a ruler. So he lived to the age of, well, he was in hiding for 7 years. So he was at 14 when he took over and became the king of Israel. He was the youngest king. And he ruled for 40 years. So he was then 57 years old when he was assassinated. We don't see any more stories about children in the Bible until we go to one of the other descendants of David. And we find this person in the New Testament. Oh, there was another story that it comes to my mind too, about Isaiah. And Isaiah was a prophet that was in the Old Testament. And he was very close to God. But what Isaiah did to a widow woman and her son had become ill and died. And we have the first record of mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, approximately 3,000 years ago, where Isaiah blew the life back into the young boy, and he lived. My angel is looking over my shoulder. But now then, getting back to the regular lineage, in the New Testament, we hear about, of course, God's own Son. The story of the Nativity, Mary's story, and Jesus growing up. How a 12-year-old boy who was born in the town of Bethlehem and laid in a manger and had the angels sing over him, frightened his parents by getting separated from them in Jerusalem at the feast of the Passover. And Mary was very upset with him, and so was Joseph. But Jesus told them, he says, I'm doing my Father's work. Jesus' stories now. Jesus loved children. One of his first miracles, after the miracles at the wedding, was to resurrect a little girl. They came to Jesus, and this was even before he even had all of his 12 disciples completely chosen. But they came to him. He went to the house, said, I will go into the room with her. And he went into the room where the little girl was. And he prayed with the little girl. And lo and behold, he brought her back to life after she was dead. This would not be the first person that Jesus resurrects. It would not be the first person that he cures. He cured many and he raised many. The stories of the Bible about children bring us a lesson. And each one of them, it starts out that, hey, we are just like they are. We too were children. We had humble beginnings. We all have humble beginnings. Our parents love us very, very dearly. They only want what is best for us. And they want us to follow their directions. God is like that. He loves us. He only wants those things that are good for us. He wants us to be blessed. Don't be sad. Don't be grumpy. Be happy. Now then, I'm going to finish up today. We all know about this story. It's in the 19th chapter of Matthew. Now Jesus was teaching people. And some people brought children to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and to pray for them. But the disciples scolded the people. Then Jesus said, "Let them come to me, and do not stop them, because the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." He placed his hands upon them and then went away. Children are very, very special to God, because until the age of enlightenment, every child is without sin. They're born into this world sinless. They are new. They are fresh. They are incredibly fragile. And I tell you what, no other organism can grow and learn as fast as a child can. They learn to speak and to communicate incredibly rapidly. They are like a sponge picking up water. Children are without sin. Jesus wants us to be like him, but like them. God loves children. Be inquisitive. Be like a sponge. Do not sin. And don't hurt those who do not sin either. Do not hurt children. Love them. It doesn't make any difference how God gives us a child. It is our responsibility as being a child of God to in turn love that child. Love that child with all your heart and all your mind. Do everything that you can to raise that child to know the love of God, to be willing to accept God into their hearts, and help them to grow, that they in turn can teach another child and love another child. God bless each and every one of you, and may we always be children. Don't be afraid to get into a squirt gun fight. Don't be afraid to giggle and laugh. Don't be afraid to be tickled. And if you must tickle somebody, tickle them too. Don't be afraid to learn. Don't be afraid to be inquisitive. Like I was curious about how many stories there were in the Bible about children. There's one other one that I forgot about that is mentioned in the story. And that was the story of Samuel, how he became a child of the temple. I couldn't keep them all straight. Of course, I'm only just a big kid myself. So God bless you. May God make his face to shine upon you and give you peace. And may you giggle and have lots of giggles today. Love one another, and I will see you again next time. But listen, if you wish to join us, you could join us on this channel. Pass it on to your friends. We also have the church down at 16th and Dayton. And Howard carries on some lessons down there. He's a lot younger than I am. And I am a little bit on the capricious side because my health is not the best in the world. But I would like to share my life with you and be with all of you a little bit longer. But I am confident that this virus, COVID-19, will be beaten just like polio was. I am a polio victim. I survived that. I have survived many, many diseases. But at any rate, I'm not taking any chances. God bless you. See you again. Bye-bye.